Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. So since last year I watched all of the Halloween DComs, I figured it would only be fair that this year I watch all of the Halloween themed episodes. And so there is a total of about 75 Halloween episodes, and so instead of ranking all of them because I didn't feel like all of them were worth talking about, I decided to pick my top 30 that I could present to you guys. And so in picking my top 30, I decided to do only one episode per show, so some shows like Jessie might have 5 Halloween episodes, but I only chose what I thought was the best out of the 5. And I feel like I should mention that one of the main criteria I had while like ordering these episodes was how spooky they were. So like some episodes might be really good in terms of like the show, but if they weren't spooky enough, then they probably didn't end up being as high on the list as like they would have been on another type of list. And so with all that being said, let's just jump right into it.
What is?
So first up is Sunny with a Chance, and I really like this episode. During the holiday season, Sunny with a Chance would make so random holiday specials, so they did the same thing for Christmas as well, and I just think that that idea is really cool. The only thing is that the episode itself like wasn't really that funny, and it wasn't really that scary either, so then that kind of bumped it down the list as well. But I did like the musical breaks, like All-Star Weekend performed, and they were one of my favorite bands, and Demi performed Work of Art as Sunny as well, and I really liked that song too. I just ended up liking the other episodes more than this one, but Shaquille O'Neal was there too, so that was fun.
Gents, ladies, griffins, and pixies, let me introduce Draggy J! Halloween, Halloween, Halloween!
So this episode was a lot of fun to rewatch, so I'm a little disappointed with how far back it is on this list, but it's basically about Jake wanting to throw this awesome Halloween party with creatures from the mystical world and then kids from school, and so the kids from school will just think that the people from the mystical world are just like people with really great costumes on, and so it was a way for them both to like mingle and have a good time. And then obviously chaos ensues and it makes for a really great episode. Overall, I did really enjoy it, but I think just similar to Sunny in terms of ranking it in comparison to some of the other episodes on this list, it just ended up falling a bit farther back because I didn't enjoy it as much in comparison, but it was still a really great episode, so if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend checking it out. And yeah, I just love watching Jake Long again. Like, I really hope that it gets added to Disney Plus eventually because it's a really great show and I'd love to watch more of it.
I just hope the fine folk of Florida will be accepting of an otter such as myself.
So I couldn't even tell you the last time I watched the show because I really only have a very vague memory of it growing up, but I'm really happy I watched this episode because it was really good. In the first half, they have a new neighbor who has moved in, who is a bat, who they think might be a vampire bat, and in the second half, they find a monkey's paw with, if you're familiar with the story, can grant you 3 wishes, but then they always end up turning bad. And I just felt like both of the storylines were really strong in this episode. I like how in the first half they kind of take on that trope of kids thinking that someone might be someone supernatural, and then I like how they use the monkey's paw story for the second episode because I feel like that's kind of an underutilized story. I recently studied it in a Gothic horror class, and so it was really fun to see a retelling of that one. I'd recommend if you're into the older Disney Channel cartoons to definitely give this episode a watch because it was a lot of fun.
When I was 8, I was a lonely girl.
So there's 2 Dog with a Blog Halloween episodes, and I chose the first one out of the 2. In this episode, Avery wants to go to this Halloween party because Lucas, the guy she has a crush on, is going to it, but she's already committed herself to her family's Halloween party. But there's also this really great side plot with Stan that really made this episode stand out for me and is probably the main reason why it's on this list. It wasn't a very spooky episode, but I really liked the storyline of it and I like the addition of a love interest. The last time I talked about Dog with a Blog, I asked you guys to recommend episodes to me that you think that I would enjoy, and after watching this episode, I think this would be one that I would recommend for other people to watch because I think it really shows that it is a good show and that it's not trash. And so if you want to watch something new for Halloween season, I would recommend the first Dog with a Blog Halloween episode. I wasn't a big of a fan of the second one. I think it was in like season 2 or something, but I liked the first one. I thought it was really good.
You already talked about Sunny, right?
Yeah, why?
I was gonna say, what about Candy Face? But then I
Remembered it's not a Halloween episode.
No, that was the bit. That was the bit.
Oh, the bit was just that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this episode was so fun to watch. It was a 2-parter like most of the animated series are on Disney Channel, and so the first half of the episode was about Cusco-ween, where Yzma was trying to take over Cusco-ween and make it Yzma-ween in sort of like a Grinch stealing Christmas sort of way, and it just made for such a fun episode. And then in the second half, they were having a school Halloween dance, and Kronk and Cusco were competing over who got to ask Mina to the dance. And honestly, if the full episode was just the first storyline, I think that this episode would have been a lot higher on the list because I really did not care for the second storyline. The first one was so good, and then the second one, I just kept thinking the whole time of like, how old is Kronk? Because I definitely have a vague memory of Kronk and Cusco fighting over Mina, but I completely forgot about it until I rewatched this episode, and so the whole time I just kept thinking like, what is the age range here? Like, is it weird that they're both fighting over the same girl? How old is she? How old is Cusco? I was just very confused the whole time, and yeah, I didn't care for that storyline as much as I did the first one. The first one was great. I would honestly just recommend watching the first half of the episode. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I'm pretty sure Emperor's New School might be coming to Disney Plus. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed yet, but if it is, definitely check out this episode because it was really good.
Forget who blew up who. That was a long time ago.
So Austin and Ally have quite a few Halloween episodes as well, and it's my personal favorite in terms of like Halloween theming episodes. So we followed the cast after they get trapped in Sonic Boom and they all start selling. Oh, but it's not called Sonic Boom anymore, is it? I don't remember. Because it might be Austin and Ally's music.
Yeah, that's dumb. Sonic Boom's
Look
so
at this. What happened?
I don't know, I wasn't there.
So we follow the cast after they get trapped in Sonic Boom on Halloween and decide to start telling scary stories to one another. And when the episode first started out, I was like, great, another storytelling episode. But then I ended up actually really liking it. The first episode in season 2 is worth mentioning as well because it's really good in terms of Ally's character development, as it's the first episode where she sings in public. And yeah, that one's a really great episode in terms of like the show, but like I mentioned earlier, it's not as good in terms of like Halloween theming, and it wasn't a very spooky episode. And so yeah, that's why this one ended up making the list instead.
Hello.
So I feel like the Girl Meets World Halloween episodes get a bad rep in general, and I'm not sure if that's justified. It might be, I don't know. I know for a fact that no show in all of television will ever be able to compare to the Boy Meets World Halloween episode in season 5, and it's kind of a shame that Girl Meets World never attempted to make something similar to it, but as far as the 3 Halloween episodes go that they did have, I think that the first one is the best out of the 3. They do a common Disney Channel Halloween episode trope. I love how that's a sentence I just said, like, that there's a common Disney Channel Halloween episode trope, but that's just a thing that exists. They have Augie tell 3 stories about one of the characters conquering their fears, with the Riley story definitely being a standout. I'm not crazy about part 2. I don't like the idea of like a ghost being the reason why the bay window is so special, and like refuse to take that as canon in the Girl Meets World universe. And then in part 3 they did the what if they never met each other plotline, and that just really didn't sit well with me, especially after they already ruined the people change people thing with Maya becoming Riley or whatever that garbage plotline was. And so overall I think that the first one is good. It was simple, it really fit into the Halloween theming, and I think that all of the plot lines worked well with one another. I can't believe this is the first time I'm talking about the replacements on this channel because it was definitely a favorite of mine growing up. I'm not sure if the concept of like replacing people is the best message to teach to kids, but I feel like I remember in the end of the episode there would always be a good lesson or the person would come back or something. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely been a hot minute since I've watched this show, and this episode in particular wasn't exactly the normal format that they would use to tell, and so I can't really use that one as an example. So I'm just gonna move on. So in this episode, Riley and Todd call in a replacement for one of their neighbors who never decorates for Halloween, and then they end up having these people move in that they think are a witch and a vampire, and it just makes for a really great episode. The Halloween theming was on point, and it was like a little bit spooky but also funny at the same time, and I'm definitely gonna be watching it for years to come.
Sure, he's deformed and grotesque, but is he a good listener?
So I couldn't decide which part to include in this list, so I just decided to use both of them because I like them both for different reasons. They both take place in this alternate universe where instead of them all participating in this ant farm program, they're a part of the Butte Ant program, so all of the kids are mutants. Or instead of are you laughing at this concept, or?
All the kids are mutants.
In the first episode, we followed the kids organizing this Halloween dance, and then in the second episode, we followed China having a crush on this human boy who's actually Logan from I Didn't Do It, and since he's a monster, like, complications ensue, and it just makes for a really great story. Calling All the Monsters is featured in the first episode, so that makes it really stand out, but then I also really like the Romeo and Juliet storyline in the second episode, and so overall, I just think they're both really good, and I would highly recommend them. So Liv Maddie has a few Halloween episodes, and for me, it comes down to this one and the very first one. This one's a part of the huge crossover event they did back in 2015 with Casey Undercover, Jessie, Girl Meets World, I Didn't Do It, and like a bunch of other Disney Channel shows. And this one in particular was just a really big standout in terms of all of the episodes in that crossover. I really liked the storyline. You follow Liv after she runs into Holden in New York, and the other is with Maddie and Willow as they're taking part in this Ridgewood tradition to scare the middle schoolers, and it just made for like a great balance of like development of my favorite ship and then also like spookiness with the Maddie plot. And not to spoil this episode for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I just can't get over the fact that Johnny Nimbus faked his own death for the sake of a prank. It's not even like he faked it just for the Rooney family, he faked it for the whole town, and I just have so many questions. And if I were to rank all of the Liv and Maddie Halloween episodes, I don't think it would be that interesting, but I just wanted to mention that Helga Rooney would definitely be at the bottom of the list because I hate that episode so much.
It's just a low battery. I was right.
So those who've been following me for a while now will probably understand why I have this episode so high on this list. A while ago I did a review of the show overall, and I mentioned how this episode is my favorite one from the series, and so it has a really special place in my heart because of that. I follow a few different plot lines. It was definitely a few too many, which was a common problem that this show had, which I talked about in my review, but the two plot lines that mattered was the one with Delia where she was trying to win the biggest pumpkin competition, and the one with Jasmine where she was trying to win the Halloween dance competition. It's also such a good episode in terms of the Logan and Jasmine development. They're another one of my favorite ships from Disney Channel, and so I'm a little bit biased because of that, but I just love this show so much and I wish it got another season so badly.
Hey, back it up, people. Our friend fell in a hole. It's a dangerous situation. celebration.
So Good Luck Charlie also has 3 Halloween episodes, and after I watched the first 2, I really didn't have high hopes for this one, but then I ended up loving it. We follow Teddy and the drama club as they go Halloween caroling to try to raise funds, and it's just as great as it sounds. They basically take Christmas carols and make them Halloween themed. And the side plot with PJ and Gabe was so good as well. It added a little bit of a spooky element to the episode too, which I loved. It was just a great episode. I was really pleasantly surprised by it. Definitely one of my favorites for sure.
No, he's unstoppable!
So Phineas and Ferb definitely takes the crown for most Halloween episodes. I think I counted 8 in total, and it came close to this one, the Monster of Phineas and Ferbenstein, and the One Good Scare Ought to Do It episode, but then I ultimately chose this one because I think it's the most spooky out of all of the episodes in total. So we follow this one guy as he's telling 3 different scary stories, and by this point I really thought I'd be sick of the scary stories plotline, but then I really enjoyed it. I feel like it's a good tool to make the episodes more spooky without having them have to make sense in the universe that they exist in. All of the stories are really good, but my favorite one is definitely the one with Candace and Ducky Momo. It's just a great episode overall, and I really enjoy it. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it because it's a lot of fun. I love sports.
I am an infamous villain bent on global conquest, and I demand...
Oh, stick a sock in it!
So this episode is such a classic and really stands out from my childhood. We follow Kim after she lies to her parents and Ron about going to this Halloween party, but then it ends up backfiring on her because she's running the stolen project that she stopped Draken from stealing. I love Ron in this episode, as per most Kim Possible episodes. It wasn't very spooky, but I feel like because the stakes were so high for Kim, it made for a really enjoyable story.
Please don't eat your brothers and sisters.
So I don't think I've ever watched a full episode of Stuck in the Middle until watching this episode, and I actually really liked it. The Diaz family has this Halloween tradition where it's kind of like Secret Santa, where instead of buying a gift for that person, you end up having to scare that person. And while I really liked the full episode overall, it was really the ending that made the whole episode stand out because it was just so well done. It just got spooky really fast, but also it like made sense as to why it got spooky really fast, and it kind of made the build up all make sense and worth it. And overall, it was just a really great episode, and I was very pleasantly surprised by it. It makes me actually want to watch this show, and so maybe when it's on Disney Plus, I'll have to check it out because yeah, I really enjoyed this episode and I would highly recommend it.
I'm not scared of anything either. Except broccoli. And clowns. And that creepy old abandoned house on the hill.
If you're not familiar with Lilo and Stitch the series, basically every episode follows a new experiment being spotted, and then they have to go and catch the experiment and find the perfect home for it. So in this episode, it's Halloween, and this particular experiment is one that transforms into your greatest fear once you see it.
Like a boggart.
What's that?
From Harry Potter.
Oh, I guess so, yeah. I think it was this experiment in particular that just made for such a good episode, but I also love Fleekley in this episode, and the stakes were really high, but it was also just the right amount of spookiness, and so yeah, I think Lilo and Stitch the series is coming to Disney Plus, but I'm not 100% sure, but if it is, I'd recommend watching this episode because yeah, it was really good.
I'll never forget her comforting words. Get over it, Oliver, it's a stinking fish.
So I was really excited to rewatch this episode because it was a really memorable one for me growing up. It's about Miley's cousin who comes to visit, who is also played by Miley Cyrus, and then Miley tries to convince everybody that she's evil, but nobody believes her. And there's this subplot with Jackson and her dad that's not bad either, and yeah, it's a great episode. If you haven't checked it out, check it out, cause it's fun. So I don't think I've watched an episode of The Weekender since probably like 2005, which is quite sad honestly because it's such a good show, and this episode did not disappoint in any way. So another common trope in a lot of the Disney Channel Halloween episodes is having the kids be too old for trick-or-treating, and I really like what The Weekenders did with that storyline. The episode follows Tino, who is like apparently the Halloween god. He's like very passionate about Halloween, and all of his friends have decided that they're too old for trick-or-treating, and so he tries to scare them into going trick-or-treating with him, and it makes for a really funny episode. There's so much more to the story that I would love to talk about, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody in case you do want to watch it. So I'll just say that the ending is really good, and I really like where they take the storyline after his friends decide that they don't want to go trick-or-treating with him. They do a really great job of showing that kids grow out of stuff at different ages, and it just made for a really heartwarming episode and reminded me why I love this show so much growing up.
It's a bowl of spaghetti!
So this is another episode that I was so pleasantly surprised by after I really didn't enjoy the first Halloween episode of the series. It's about Rocky and Cece starting to feel like they might be too old for trick-or-treating, and so they decide to do a mature Halloween and stay home and do like mature things. And then there's also a subplot with the guys who are visiting this haunted house, and it's like real spooky. And this whole episode overall is really funny, but then it wasn't until the end of the episode that it started to get really good, where they added that mystery element. My only complaint would be the way that they explained the mystery. I didn't really like it. I felt like it was a little bit of a cop-out, and I would have liked if they left it more open-ended, and I feel like it would have added to the story better. But overall, I do think it's a great episode, and it was a really good Halloween episode. And yeah, I really liked it. It was a lot of fun.
The ghost must be downstairs knocking on the front door. What kind of lame ghost would knock? Maybe he was raised right.
So I didn't remember how well I knew this episode until I started rewatching it again, and then once I started watching it, all the memories came flooding back as to how much I loved this one growing up. We basically follow Kevin as he's telling the story of the gang ghost hunting in the firehouse, and then Nick goes missing during the hunt. Some of the dialogue is really off, like they'll just say stuff that doesn't flow right or just sounds really unnatural, but I almost feel like it kind of added to the episode in a way, and I like in between the breaks where they'd have their little interludes into the next part of the show. Like, I don't really know how to explain it, but I'll like throw in clips, I'm sure. Yeah, overall it's just a really great episode, just the right amount of spookiness, but also really funny. It's probably one that I'll rewatch every year.
Whoopin' whales a worry. What's dogging the digger?
So this episode is another classic. Recess actually had a full Halloween special, but it never aired as an actual episode, so we're not gonna count it. But this episode is really good, and so I'm really excited to talk about it. It does the same storytelling premise with Butch telling 3 scary stories that happened at the school. I think that the story with the ghosts of the past Finsters coming to life is probably the best one out of the 3. Recess is probably one of the best shows to come from Disney Channel, so I can't believe I've never really gotten a chance to talk about it on my channel. I'm so excited that it's coming to Disney Plus, that so many more people will get to watch it because it is just such a classic Disney Channel series.
Yay!
So I feel like this episode is a good sequel to his predecessor, if you want to call it that. Basically, there's a ghost on the ship who starts communicating with Zack to help him clear his name, and it just results in some good spooky stuff with this ghost doing some spooky things. My only complaint would be that I feel like Zack kind of comes to the conclusion too fast. Like, I think it would have been interesting to explore more of Zack, like, trying to figure out what happened, but I do understand the time constraints for the episode, and so I can't really complain too much. But overall, it is a really fun episode, and I like when they go full Ghostbuster mode, and it was another one that was really memorable for me growing up, and so obviously I am a little bit biased to it because of that as well.
You know what'll cheer everybody up? Justin, give me a beat.
No.
Good enough.
This episode is one of my all-time favorites. I watch it every year. Me and my friends actually made costume shirts inspired by Alex one year, even though she definitely did not originate that concept. But the episode follows the sub shop getting ready for their annual haunted house, but then they get told that their house isn't scary enough, so they gotta make it scarier or else they're not allowed to make a haunted house anymore. And so Alex decides to get some help from the Wizarding World and bring some real ghosts to the haunted house to make it scarier. And there's just so many good, memorable moments in this episode. I would love to have it a lot higher on the list, and the main reason why it isn't is because I feel like it's just not as spooky as some of the other ones, although Manthu's scary face definitely got to me as a kid.
Lizard Man!
So I'm not the biggest fan of Jessie. I loved it growing up, but I just have a hard time watching it now because I'm not a big fan of Debbie Ryan's acting, and so I hadn't seen any of the Halloween episodes going into it, but I was very pleasantly surprised with all of them. They were all phenomenal. I chose this episode in particular because I felt like it was the spookiest out of all of them, similar to like why I choose every other episode on this list. It's basically about each kid going missing after watching a scary video, but like I said, all of the other Halloween episodes are really good as well. There's one inspired by The Shining that was good, and there's one where like Jessie's boyfriend proposes to her that was just like a really great episode in terms of like Jessie episodes, but in terms of Halloween episodes, I just felt like this one was better in terms of like the theming. I think my only complaint would be the cop-out ending, similar to Shake It Up. I just didn't like how they explained the mystery element, but I do still think it is a really great episode.
Honey? Kids? Marco.
So the main reason why I have this one so high up on the list is because of the first half of the episode. Although I do love Spider with the Top Hat, I just feel like the first half of this episode was just so well done. What are you doing?
Exercising.
It's a similar premise to the Wizards episode. Basically, their house isn't scary enough, and so Star and Jana have a seance to contact Hungry Larry to come and make their house scarier, but then it ends up backfiring. It just makes for a really spooky episode. And I don't want to spoil anything in case you haven't seen it, because I would like you guys to go out and watch it if you haven't seen it. Oh my god, you're so repetitive!
If you haven't seen it, go watch it, guys.
Thanks, Nina.
Just keep it in.
But I have more to say!
Say it now.
I'm trying, I can't get it out. There's one part in particular that really leaves you with that like spooky feeling that not many other episodes on this list were able to do, and so that's another reason why this one did make it so high on this list.
Sus, away!
I absolutely love everything about this episode. We follow the kids as they're about to go trick-or-treating, but then this monster shows up and tells them that they have to deliver 500 pieces of candy to him or else he'll eat them. And so like, the stakes are really high. Overall, it's a really fun and spooky episode, and I would highly recommend it. So I don't think I ever watched this episode growing up, and I'm not sure if that's because I'm too young or because I didn't really like Phil of the Future that much, but I think if I were to have watched it back then, it would have really spooked me because it was a really good episode. It's basically about Phil finding out that this girl they go to school with is this evil cyborg from his time zone, and so they have to defeat her. And it was just the right amount of spooky while still being funny at the same time, and I just absolutely loved this episode.
Dude, the witch trials were crazy.
What are you reading about?
The witch trials.
I'm scared. I know, me too, but do you know what I'm really afraid of?
So you have a tale too?
You know me oh too well.
So I think anyone else that grew up with this episode would definitely agree that it sticks with you. I think rewatching it now, it wasn't as scary as when I watched it as a kid, but when I watched it as a kid, it definitely scared me. I think it was Nina who was saying that it reminds her of the Pinocchio movie where they all turn into donkeys, and like that was terrifying. So in this episode, Raven and Chelsea turn into cows, so it's pretty spooky. And I don't really know what else to say about this episode besides like it's really good, and I love the ending of it. The way that they explain how everything happened was perfect, and overall it was a great episode and really memorable. So I very vaguely remember Even Stevens. I think that's just because of how old I am. I think I like just missed when it was airing a lot. But that means I went into this episode not knowing anything, which I was so happy about because it turned out to be such a good episode. The story takes place on Halloween, obviously, and the school's having these eye tests. But then everyone who takes these eye tests starts acting really weird. And I don't want to say too much because I want those who haven't seen it to go in not knowing anything either. And so I'm just gonna stop there and just say that it was a really great episode, and I love the explanation at the end of it. And I didn't read the title of the episode going into it, so that was a lot of fun for Nina and I to guess like what the outcome was gonna be, and it did not disappoint. It was a really great episode and a lot of fun. Everything about it was just perfect and really makes me want to watch Even Stevens more, so I'll definitely do that once it's on Disney Plus. I'm really giving Disney Plus a lot of shoutouts in this video. Like, they should sponsor me.
What would they give you?
Money.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the #1 episode, which I'm sure y'all can guess what it's going to be, I do have one honorable mention and a couple dishonorable mentions, I guess you can call them. The honorable mention goes to Soy Luna, which obviously you guys know is my favorite show of all time. While they don't have a Halloween episode, because Halloween episodes are mainly a North American thing, but Soy Luna does have an episode about the Day of the Dead, which is a Mexican holiday that takes place in early November, and just the costumes and everything are just so on point in this episode, and the storyline is great. And there's this one really great moment where Luna's remembering her parents that makes me emotional every time I watch it. And so yeah, it's in season 3. If you haven't seen it, you'd probably be very confused by like everything else that's going on. But if you want to learn a little bit more about this holiday, I'd recommend checking that episode out because I think it's really good and it does a better job of explaining the holiday than Lizzie McGuire did, which I'll talk about in a second. So as far as dishonorable mentions go, I figured I'd talk about Bunked first because that one might not be as surprising to some of you. But if you've never seen the Bunked episode, it basically follows the kids thinking that there's a killer on the loose, but then it turns out to just be this kid who's trying to get one of their counselors back for kicking him out of the camp. And sorry for spoiling the whole episode, but I don't think anyone should watch it because it was a terrible episode. It started off really strong, like there was a little warning at the beginning saying like this episode's gonna be spooky, and so I was really excited about like the scary level of this episode, and the lead up to the killer and stuff was really good, but then I just feel like they took it way too far and really made it seem like this camp counselor was about to die and be killed. And I've never really watched much of Bunked. After I saw the first episode, I knew the show wasn't for me, and so I'm not very familiar with this counselor, but I just don't think anybody deserves to think that they're literally about to die. Like, it's different from like a ghost haunting them or a monster coming at them than like an actual real life person killing another person. Like, that's just way too far and really did not sit well with me, and so I felt like I had to talk about it because I don't think it was okay, and I don't really know what else to say about it besides the fact that like Bunked is now confirmed trash, unless I already confirmed that it was trash in my Bunked is trash video. I guess this just double confirms it. Now, the other show that left me with a similar feeling to Bunked, which I never really thought I would ever say, was Lizzie McGuire, which I was really upset about because I felt like the episode was really strong all the way through. It's basically about Lizzie and her friends getting back at Kate for being mean to Lizzie, and I'm definitely more familiar with Lizzie McGuire, and while I think that Kate would deserve some karma, I just don't think that this was the right way to do it. They basically humiliate her in front of everybody, and everyone laughs at her, and it just made me so sad for her, and I was like, this is not okay. Why are we acting like this is okay? And I just really don't like the idea of stooping to someone's level to get back at them. I just feel like it's just bullying the bully, and I don't think that that's effective at all. And that's why I just had to talk about it, because it really left me feeling uneasy, and I just wanted to know if anyone else felt the same way about this episode, because I know Nina did, and so yeah, I like Lizzie McGuire, so it was really disappointing to see them end the episode that way. But now that we've got the honorable mentions and the dishonorable mentions out of the way, let's move on to the #1 episode.
Spirit, hear me. I am calling you.
What's going on?
I am on hold.
So I don't think there's any surprise here with this episode being #1. I don't think any Disney Channel Halloween episode will ever be able to top this one because it's just so iconic. And while I'm pretty sure everyone's seen this episode, I'll explain it anyways for those of you who haven't. It's basically about the Tipton gang going and spending a night in what they think is a haunted hotel room. I don't think anyone can deny how great this episode is. It's definitely one of the best episodes from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I just could not have it as #1. And I was actually reading this article the other day where they interviewed the actor who played Esteban, and he kind of talks about how this episode really helped Zack and Cody have a longer run fun and how he was able to improv a lot of the bits in this episode, and it was just a really interesting article, so I'll leave that link down below because I think y'all should check it out. It was really cool. But I want to know what your favorite Disney Channel Halloween episode is. If there's any that I didn't include that you think I should have, let me know in the comments down below. I can't wait to read all about it. Anyways, guys, my name is Caitlin. You can follow me everywhere at Kate Loves Disney. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on that bell so you're notified every time I post a new video. But that's all I have to say for today. Hope you'll have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. My butt hurts from sitting on the stupid floor for like 4 hours.
Hey now.
Hey
Don't
now.
insult its intelligence.
Huh?
Don't insult its intelligence.
My floor?
Yeah.
It's not a thing. It's a thing. Ah!
You can't even talk.
I can't talk.